cultures and continents, presents Music of Africa with one of Africa's leading composers and organists, Fela Sowande of Nigeria. Joining Mr. Sowande is the gifted Nigerian drummer, Solomon Ilori.
That, of course, was contemporary African music, because it is based on this African traditional melody and on this African rhythm. Now perhaps we should begin by meeting the individual members of the orchestra and seeing something of each individual drum. First, the konkolo, or the cowbell, as you would call it here. The next one is the shekere, which is a gourd, and as you will see, it has these cowries strung round the gourd, which makes the sound when the drummer plays them. Let's hear the shekere now and note the sound. Now, if that seems to you very easy, I suggest to get hold of a shekere and try it yourself. Now we come to the kanango, which is one of the smaller sized drums in the African drum orchestra. And this is one of the accompaniment drums. Now we'll hear the kanango, and again I want you to note the tonal characteristic of this drum. And then there are those two tall drums you see standing on this stage. Now, these are the type of drums that you'll find in almost every African village. And these belong to the bass fiddle scale in our own drum orchestra. And as you hear the drum being beaten, I think you'll notice the depth of tone that there is in these drums. Now, let's hear these drums, these two big ones. Now, last but not the least, we come to the talking drum. And this is the kingpin in any African drum orchestra. Here, I think we're going to spend a little time to see this drum in more detail. First, the two drum heads, one in the front and one at the back. And then connecting these two drum heads, you have the leather thongs. You'll see the drummer holds these leather thongs with his left hand. And so he is able to manipulate these thongs and thereby varying the pressure on the drum heads, which in turn varies the pitch of the drum. Now, I think perhaps this is the time to point out the importance of the drummer who plays this talking drum. He is in any African drum orchestra, he is the leader and the conductor. He starts the orchestra and he stops the orchestra by playing certain rhythmic patterns, which tells them when he's going to start and when he's going to stop. Now, we're going to hear them play one typical African drum pattern, which we know as the waro. in this program, we are going to try and examine some of the more important aspects of African traditional music, and also what happens, or what has happened and is likely to happen, through the mingling of two cultures, African and European. But there are several points that I think we ought to pay attention to for a start. The first is that there are basic differences between European music and African traditional music. And one is that here we have this, we've come to the stage now where we have these things in layers. We have composers who do the composition, we have the performers who do the playing, we have the audiences who have to dress up to go and hear concerts at certain times and in certain places, all of which are very foreign to music in the typical traditional society anywhere in Africa. There you have performers and you have participants, those who are not actually performing, so identify themselves with those who are performing that sometimes it is difficult for an onlooker, for a visitor, to spotlight who are the performers and who are the participants. But even so, there is such a wide variety of types of music in Africa itself, in any one nation, that it's difficult to talk of African music per se. But for one thing, that there is, with all this variety, one thing unites all these varied types together, and that is the function of the music. Every activity of life has its own type of music, and even such a thing as hunting, as agriculture, as going fishing, and when we come to such normal, mundane things as chopping wood, then you get this type of functional music.
Iṣẹ́ kí là ké ń ṣe àáké, iṣẹ́ kí là ké ń ṣe àáké, ojoojúmọ́ là ké ń lagi àáké, ojoojúmọ́ là ké ń gégi àáké, ojoojúmọ́ là ké ń lagi àáké, ojoojúmọ́ là ké ń gégi àáké, iṣẹ́ kí là ké ń ṣe àáké, iṣẹ́ kí là ké ń ṣe àáké.
Now, obviously, that functional music was concerned with the act, the actual work being done. But there is another type that we ought to listen to, the functional music which is concerned with ceremony or with ritual. A young bride who is on the verge of going to her new home, to her husband's home, usually sings, or traditionally I should say, sings a song to say goodbye to her family and to remind herself that she is going without the hearth gods who cannot follow her. The household gods will not go with her. Her mother will not go with her. Her parents, her brothers or sisters will not go with her. In fact, there's only one thing she can take out of the home, and that is her own head. And this is a particularly beautiful example, I think, of this type of functional music which deals with ceremony and ritual. Let's hear it now.
Mo lágbọ́n mi màmá dá o, mo lágbọ́n mi màmá rẹ̀ ni ayé ń fẹ́, ẹ̀gbọ́n mi ń bẹ ńlé àbúròde o. Àní bí gbá ọ̀dára lódò mọ́mọ́ fi mú mi, àní bí kàìnkàn ọ̀dára lódò mọ́mọ́ fi wẹ̀ ọ́. Mo lágbọ́n mi màmá rẹ̀ o, ẹ̀gbọ́n mi ń bẹ ńlé àbúròde o. Pàǹtúrí mo yí ká, mo ní lónìí mo wá gbìrè mi kí n tó máa lọ. Àní kí n lówó kí n bímọ, kí n ṣòwò kí n jèrè, kí n bóde pàdé, kí sọ ọmọ ó jiná fún mi jẹ. Mo lágbọ́n mi lọ́làjú o, ò bá sì fún mi níre mi kí n tó máa lọ. Mo ní tí n bá ní kégún lé ó sì mí lọ lé ọkọ mi, tó bá dé bòde á padà. Tí n bá ní kó sá lé ó sì mí lọ lé ọkọ mi, bó bá dé bòde á padà. Mo ní ṣe borí ẹni nìkan ló lè sí ni. Mo ní lónìí o, kórìí mi ó wá sí mí lọ lé ọkọ mi.
Now, these were Nigerian songs. And of course, we will have to draw examples from Nigerian music for this program. But Nigeria is in Africa, after all, and I think that what is valid for traditional society in Nigeria is valid for traditional society in Africa, on general broad lines. Now, one thing we more or less have to come to terms with is the popularly held idea that traditional African music is necessarily dependent on red-hot rhythm. But that is not true. That's not correct, because we have melody in our music, melody that exists independent of rhythm and is to be properly regarded as pure melody. There is a particularly fine example in the vocal form which we know as the rara, in which people's praises are sung. And in this vocal form, the song changes into speech and then back again into song, almost imperceptibly. If you have very sharp ears, I think you will notice this as we hear this example of the rara.
Moni baba loto nílùú àásì ìsinmi mo lóní kànáńgó mo ní kó ṣe sùúrù nítorí pẹ́gbẹ́ lóní ilé aró àlùkò lóní ilẹ̀ osùn mo ní ṣebí lékè ẹyẹ ọ̀gẹ̀rẹ̀ ẹyẹ olókùn sóun náà lóní ilẹ̀ ẹlẹ́fun. Mo ní ṣe bọ́lá nìkan ló mẹ́jọ dá bàbá agbárí gẹ̀ẹ́sì mo ní bàbá kúlógún ọdún bàbá ẹnìkan ò lè gbé wa sí kò sí èèyàn tí fìdá pàgbé kórósó bàbá ta ní fi gbóngbó palábàáhùn a kì í rí dà lọ́rùn èsìsì irọ́ ni wọ́n ń pa èké ni wọ́n ń ṣe mo mọ̀ ní ò mọ̀mọ́ sáláwàdà tí ó fọwọ́ rẹ̀ kùn lórí mo ní bẹ́ẹ̀ mẹ́rin àgbọ̀n erin bẹ́ẹ̀ mọ̀sẹ́ jí ọlọ́bẹ̀. Ẹni tí ọmọ mi ò gbóhùn ẹnu mi pé mi làkànjẹ́ ọmọ sọ́ba lójú ọmọ mẹ́wàá mòye rẹ̀ mo ògùn yín nǹkan parí ijó ọmọ alábẹ́ ọmọ olóòlà ìṣìkọ̀là. Mo ló dáwọ́ àwẹ̀ o mo ló mọ̀ dọ̀wọ́ ẹ̀.
Now that thin line of demarcation between singing and speaking is possible because of the tonal inflection of the language, of the Yoruba language in which that rara was sung. And when we speak of tonal inflection, we mean that the way the voice rises or falls specifically affects the meaning of the word. In other words, the meaning of the word is dependent on how the voice rises or how the voice falls. For instance, if we take the Yoruba word OBI, if we pronounce that word with a rising inflection like this, OB, it means female. But if we pronounce it with a downward inflection like this, OB, we've changed the meaning from female into cola nuts, the type of native fruit which is eaten. And if we pronounce it with a rising inflection of OB, it means parent. Whereas if we pronounce it with a downward inflection of OB, we've turned the word into a phrase meaning he, she, or it vomited. So you can see that the language is so intertwined with music that it is very difficult to separate them. Because of this characteristic of the language, and because of the way the talking drum has been made, the construction of the drum, it is possible for the drum to speak, to talk. Let's hear an example in a proverb. Well, what the drum was saying there was, in English, the robber's problem or the thief's problem is not how to steal the chief's trumpet, but where to blow it. Níbo ni ó ti fọ́n? Níbo ni ó ti fọ́n? Olè tó gbé kàkàkí, níbo ni ó ti fọ́n? Let's hear it on the drum once more. Now, this rather unusual virtue of the talking drum, the ability to talk in a way that people can understand, makes of the drummer a very important person. In the traditional society, he was the society's television, newspaper, radio, and candid camera all rolled into one. So you can see that where he has charge of an orchestra, he becomes a very important person indeed. And in fact, he is responsible for this type of music which you can hear in almost any village in Africa. Now, what is happening today? Well, the two cultures are mingling. There's no question whatever about that. And one of the results is one of the most popular forms of music which is now very much in vogue, not only in Africa but outside Africa. Some people say it really originated from Ghana. Some say it's not from Ghana, from outside Africa. We don't know. But what we do know is that in almost every club, every club in West Africa, this high life is enjoying a very great popularity. There is a very fine example of this type of music, which is the result of the fusion of the mingling of these two cultures in the Tolani, which has been written by our master drummer, Solomon Ilori, and this I think we're going to hear right now, and I'm going to enjoy playing it with his group. Now, that is most enjoyable, but that's not the only thing that has happened as the result of the mingling of these two cultures, because African musicians who have had academic training are now reaching back onto their own traditional music for melodies or melodic and rhythmic patterns, and are seeking to combine these with Western forms and Western techniques. Now, I think we should mention people like the late J.G. Balanta of Sierra Leone, Professor Kwabena Nketia of Ghana, Dr. T.K. Phillips of Nigeria, and Todd Machikiza of South Africa. And these people have written for voices, for orchestra, for chamber music groups, and for the church organ. And on this level, I'd like to use something which I myself have written for the organ as illustration. This particular organ piece of mine is based on a Yoruba sacred folk melody, which goes like this. And the organ piece on which that tune, which uses that tune, is like this. So you see from there that African music, like African life, is changing. We've had a mingling of two cultures, and each has much to gain, much to learn from the other. However you may feel, whatever you may feel about that, we are sure that we have much to gain from the West, and that we are expanding our own musical vocabulary through this contact. But in the main, what we hope to do is to reach back to our past, to preserve it, to use it as a foundation on which to build, because it's been truly said that the man that hath no past has no future.
This is NET, National Educational Television.